Hey Reddit, what was your thank God I looked at the contract moment? I signed up for a gym membership on a whim and got sketched out when they initially charged me $250 instead of only the $90 for the month. I went home and legit didn't sleep because I was so mad I went through with it. I called and asked the next day to see if I could cancel, and almost everyone I spoke to either said no, it was impossible, or only if I moved to an area that didn't have the gym. I checked the contract and you could cancel within the first 2 weeks, and I was only 3 days in. You bet your butt I canceled so fast. Story 2. My wife and I were at the car dealership buying our first car. The dealership was offering special no-interest financing for recent college grads, and we were using that to finance the car. The finance guy presented us with 2 options, a 3-year payment plan and a 5-year payment plan. The whole time he made it sound like the zero interest applied to both, so we went for the 5-year plan to get a lower payment. Finance guy tries to get us to sign without reading the paperwork. We weren't having that. Come to find out, the longer payment plan didn't qualify for the no-interest deal, and we were getting charged 6.5%, which is a hell of a lot more than zero. We got upset and threatened to walk out after we realized what they were trying to pull, and got them to come down on the price. I know they've pulled that on other recent grads who didn't read the paperwork and just signed. What a weirdly scummy thing to do with a debt of all things, too. Like, debt is the easiest way to just drown yourself after getting out of school, and these people are actively trying to get college grads into debt. That's gross. Story 3. When I bought my car new 3 years ago, the finance department processed and had me sign paperwork at a certain price. Then they called me 3 days later and told me that their lender fell through, and I would actually have to pay an additional $100 a month. I brought in the paperwork with the price I signed for and the keys, told them they would stick to the contract or they would have their car back with the additional mileage. Apparently, this is fairly common practice at car dealerships. Beware. Story 4. Buying my house. Husband signed the paperwork and I went in later that day to sign. I started to read through the loan application. Mortgage lender said, "What are you doing? You don't have to read it. Your husband already signed it." I was like, no, I want to make sure it's what I want. Loan was a $250,000 at 25%. Yeah, right. Didn't sign it and got out of there. Mortgage guy said he was going to take me to court. I said go ahead. It would be cheaper than what he wanted me to sign. Took over all the mortgage stuff from then on. Mortgage guy was a friend of a high school friend of my husband. Edit. Just talked to my husband. The man who tried to sell us on this mortgage got busted and arrested. Lost everything and had to have his parents bail him out. Also, the mortgage lender we did go through for our FHA loan, he also got arrested for selling bad loans. Do your research. Yeah, taking on something like a mortgage, not the same as signing up for a website. You should probably not skim through the terms and conditions and actually read them. Or I guess since I'm comparing it to a website, read them at all, because I know you don't lie to me. Story 5. Viewed this great flat and was ready to hand over deposit when I decided that I should actually read the rules they sent me once over again. I had read the one that they gave me when I viewed the place and it was a bit strict. And in general, I thought it was silly to have written rules when you're paying that much, but again, nothing I couldn't handle. Thank Odin I checked. The rules listed in the email were completely different and included gems like, if you wish to bring a guest to the house, you must put forth a request in writing at least 1 week prior and must be approved by all members of the flat. There will be no guests allowed after 10 p.m. Absolutely no guests staying over. Any guest that comes over will require a $20 fee to go towards water usage for toilets. I'm like, you want me to pay over $1,000 a month for my own private room and not be able to invite people to come over without jumping through ridiculous hoops? Yeah, noped out real quick. There were a few other ridiculous things, but that one took the buns. Story 6. Was sent a freelance contract for a job offer in the media industry. I was a graduate at the time with 2 years experience. Was offered £6.50 hourly pay with the exception that I must be able to work 37.5 hours a week. I had to use my own car for business purposes but couldn't claim expenses for fuel and mileage. And above all, the contract demanded full rights for the company to use any creative works I produced within 2 years before the start date of the position. I did not accept the job. Story 7. My husband, then fiancé, was getting ready to buy a used car that's often used for street racing/rally racing. He doesn't do that, but it's a damn fun car to drive. And it's pretty much sure to have aftermarket modifications if it's been owned by someone who used it for racing or as a status symbol. My husband has done his research, and neither of us were going to be taken for a ride, and even though this was the car we absolutely wanted, we were prepared to walk away. It was fairly low mileage. The dealer, a third-party outfit, not a brand dealership, kept swearing up and down that the car was still under manufacturer's warranty and had no aftermarket mods. I was skeptical. I knew that if the car had any aftermarket mods, the warranty would be void for that portion of the car, if not the whole thing, depending on the extent of the influence of the mods. I read every piece of paperwork they wanted my husband to sign and explained them to him, but I couldn't find anything that guaranteed that the car was still under manufacturer's warranty, so I straight up told him to walk away from the deal unless they gave us a piece of paper that both parties signed that said exactly that. They did it. Lo and behold, the car had an aftermarket downpipe, a really nice one. that had been installed incorrectly. It was affecting the airflow through the engine and could have eventually caused permanent damage to the engine. It was going to cost us hundreds of dollars to either have it reinstalled properly or return the engine to its original unmodified state, which would have given us warranty compliance, yay! But surprise, jerks! We had a piece of paper that gave us a hold on their balls. They tried to avoid us for a week or so, until we left them a voicemail saying that if we didn't hear from them in 24 hours, they would be hearing from our lawyer. And that's how we didn't pay for having the car restored to warranty specs. We even got to keep the downpipe. It's kinda spiffy. Story 8. Mine wasn't really extreme, but my girlfriend and I were shopping for houses and we were checking out a townhouse-style condominium. The price was within our budget and the monthly maintenance fees were average for the area. It was an open house event hosted by a retailer, so the property's annual expenses were included in a pamphlet. I found that on top of the regular monthly maintenance fees, around $350, there was an additional expense of $800 every 6 months. I asked why there was an additional expense if there were already regular fees. She responded the extra $1,600 per year was used to keep the fees low. I responded that the fees are average for the area, and many places in the same neighborhood are already lower. Long story short, it was a nice house, but we didn't pursue it further. I'm on board with the idea of condo fees if they cover the things I would normally pay for, like heat and water, snow removal, garden care, etc. And, if needed, additional expenses for major upgrades like new roofs or doors or windows. But expecting 12 houses in the row complex to kick in $1,600 bonus every year without specific accountability isn't something that interests me. Story 9. I went to a reasonably well-advertised jewelry store to pick up an engagement ring. Knowing that I wanted it to be a surprise and that she would want to pick out her own ring in due time, I made sure that the ring would be returnable for full price, and even for a full refund from that store when I bought it for about $900. After the proposal, my then-fiancé found a ring she liked better at a different jeweler, so I went to return the ring. When I said I wanted to return the ring, the clerk said, "No problem, just sign this and we'll get you sorted out." I read the small paper and it stated something very close to, "I now confirm this sale to be a final sale and cannot be refunded or returned for any reason." I read it, pen in hand, looked at her and said, "Why would I sign that?" She took the slip back, got her manager, and I was able to get the full refund amount via the same way I paid on my debit card. For those interested, it was a People's Jewelers in Vancouver. Hey, straight up naming and shaming. Honestly, I'm a fan. If they're literally trying to scam you, first of all, scamming you on an engagement ring, come on. Why ruin what could potentially be one of the happiest memories of someone's life? Or two people's lives together. But also, I'm not too far from Vancouver, so this could be applicable to me, so thanks, OP. Although it is an engagement ring, so maybe not. Depends on my luck, huh? Story 10. U.S. Marines. I was enlisting for a program that's 5 years of active duty, age 19. Get the contract and it says 8 years. Nobody ever mentioned anything about that. I ask and the recruiters point out that it's an overall 8-year contract, but only 5 active. And the other 3 I can serve in the reserves or the inactive ready reserve. They explained that IRR means you're still eligible for service on paper, but have no monthly or annual obligation except keeping your address updated. And that all it means is, if World War III breaks out and they're drafting guys anyway, you'll come back in at your old occupation and rank. So I signed. Note, this was pre-9/11 when we had no major wars going on. 9/11 happens. I do 2 tours in Iraq while on active duty, and 6 months before my 8 years is up, I get involuntarily recalled and sent to Afghanistan for 6 months as well. Story 11. I just bought a used car, and my wife and I had to bring our newborn. She hadn't pooped all day, and I knew from her doing it the day earlier that a monster crap was brewing. Well, it happened in the finance office, and she crapped all over me. Now, just before this, we talked about the $250 cancellation option, and how I didn't want it and how I sold cars in my past. We had a good conversation about it. Well, this jabroni gives my wife a digital paper to sign to reject it, and zooms into help her sign, but is really obscuring the fact that he had her sign for it. After I emerged from the bathroom covered in watered-down crap, I read the whole long form and caught it. He pretended to not know what the charge was. Then he said it would take hours to manually redo. I told him to get to it. It didn't take hours. I didn't know about the signature until after I got home because he gave me a digital copy of that on a USB drive. When I got home and looked over the digital part of the contract, I was floored to see and put together what happened. This jerk saw us struggling with our new baby and thought he could steal $250 from us to pad the back end. If I've learned anything from this thread, car dealerships suck. Like, I kinda knew that to begin with, but wow. Story 12. First time renter here. Moved out of uni-res to get my own place so I could take my family cat. Found a nice little apartment for cheap downtown. Intended to move in with a roommate or two to split the cost, close friends of mine. Our landlord didn't speak English very well, so although he insisted, "Oh yeah, everything good, everything okay," I wasn't sure he understood what I wanted. When he brought out the contract, it said in writing that pets were not allowed. and the cost would increase for more people living there. I pointed it out to him, but he retorted to the effect of, "I use this contract for all tenants. These rules don't apply to you." Yeah, bull. I told him I wasn't signing unless he rewrote the contract, but he refused, saying he wasn't going to waste time pandering to paranoid people. I offered to write the contract myself and was baffled that he agreed to it. So I wrote up my own contract with super lenient conditions, making sure to protect my own butt. Had a lawyer look at it and notarize it, and now I live with my cat and roommates at the original cost. Story 13. My wife and I were 3 days away from signing paperwork to buy a condo, and they sent us the latest, and we noticed that they changed the interest rate by a tiny amount, like 0.2. They said the change was because they reran our credit, so they altered the interest to reflect our current credit rating. That left a bad taste in our mouths, so we said no and walked away. The next week, my company got bought out and they moved us out of state. If we would have signed, we would have had to either sell immediately or quit my job. Story 14. We bought a new RV and received a coupon for 3 free nights at a luxury RV campground park. Of course, to receive the free nights, we had to sit down with the salespeople trying to sell us a membership first. My ex was very gullible and gobbled up the free cookies and sales pitch after they showed us the beautiful photos of their campgrounds all over the state. There were many promises made of ocean views, clubhouses, swimming pools, etc. I was young and he was definitely the one in charge at the time, so next thing I know, the 3 free nights turns into a full-blown membership with extremely pricey annual fees. But now we can camp anywhere, anytime, right? We head out that weekend to the dedicated property for the free nights, and it's an absolute crap hole. There is no ocean view. The pool is covered in scum. The clubhouse has the smell of a mismanaged senior home with 3 residents staring at us oddly. Basically, it's a gravel-lined trailer park for people who live in their RVs. I'm upset. The kids are sad and trying to play on the rusty swing set. We bailed out that night after driving 3 hours, and the next morning he tried to cancel. They had told us we could cancel any time. Yeah, right. After rereading the contract, this was a lifetime membership, and you could not cancel it without following their exact fine print instructions of cancellation via certified mail, written in the blood of your firstborn. It also had to be done within 48 hours of signing. These jerks send people away for 3 days to a dump, so when you come back, you are contracted for life like a timeshare. Luckily for us, my complaining got us home within 24 hours, wrote up their ridiculous demands for cancellation, and booyah'd right out of there. Then they tried to not refund us despite it all, and I threatened them with litigation, so they finally did. I have a scathing Yelp review about them that gets regular votes for being useful and funny. They recently tried to get it removed and failed. Suck it, you dirty, rotten leeches. If they're trying to lock you in, you'd think that they would make the 3-day stay a little bit nicer, no? But I guess if it's just at their normal kind of trailer parks or whatever that they have, then it's not going to be special. But hey, I'm just saying it would be way smarter for them to have a really nice one to send you for the 3 days so you don't complain and go home early. I really shouldn't be giving them any ideas though, because this is already super scummy. Story 15. Looked at renting a house about 7 years ago, and the homeowner had inserted some of her own clauses into the standard tenancy agreement. Now, this is absolutely fine to do, but they were purposefully put into different sections of the document. So if you read the part detailing security deposit, you wouldn't see her additions, as she put them in another area on the paperwork. One clause was that no footwear of any kind can be worn inside the property. Failure to adhere to this will mean the whole property's carpeting must be professionally cleaned. Another was the waiving of the mandatory notice period before the homeowner can come by and inspect the property. There is supposed to be a minimum amount of time that they must give you notice-wise before they can come over, unless there's a serious property fault, a leak or whatever, so they can't just turn up unannounced. She wanted that waived so she could check we were treating her property right, and if we weren't, we would be immediately evicted. I also caught her telling a relative that she registers eviction proceedings upon the start of the tenancy, so she can evict them as soon as she decides they've broken her rules. There was a mandatory waiting period between commencement of eviction proceedings and being able to actually get enforcement officers to evict a tenant. Not sure of the current rules on this anymore, as I don't have much to do with rental properties now. Noped out of that house real quick. Got a much bigger, cheaper house, albeit more of a death trap, a few streets away. Story 16. Had a company I worked for bought by another. The handover included new contracts for all staff with the new owners. I went through every word and I'm glad I did, as one clause gave the new owners rights over any IP I had ever had. For example, if I had a patent from before I even worked for the previous company, I was signing away all rights to it, without any compensation. This included if they ever moved into a new area of business. So if I suddenly got successful in another field outside of work time and nothing to do with their business, they were allowed to just start a new field of endeavor and take everything from me. I'm glad I did check, because they later proved to be deceitful and dishonest. Kept on changing our salary payments, super contributions, accidentally forgetting to pay us, all sorts of stupid stuff. Story 17. Bit long, but satisfying. To me, at least. Was leasing with a big apartment company where I had a garage along with my apartment. The lease contracts they cook up are like 20 pages long, and naturally slanted heavily in their favor. They use them as clubs against their tenants. Generally scummy behavior all around. They removed the restricted access gates because they were tired of maintaining them and kept advertising it anyway. Stuff like that. So the contract comes up for renewal, and they of course raise the rent on both the apartment and the garage, counting on inertia to keep me there even though they're blatantly advertising a lower rate on the same model for new leases. Now at this point I'm planning on leaving in a year anyway to buy my house, so I swallow it and tell them to write up the contract for me to review. I sit down and read the whole thing, and notice they've clearly left the garage fee off the contract, even though it's noted as being leased. I bite my tongue and read over it, and yes, according to the paperwork, the sum total of everything was the price of just the apartment, and the total is less than what I paid the previous year. I sign it, fully expecting to hear back that they made a mistake, before the property manager countersigns it. A few days later, I get my fully executed contract on my doorstep. Now, the fun begins. I wait until the bill shows up on their payment website and call them up saying, "There seems to be some mistake. You're charging me X when my lease is for Y. Please correct it." They tell me they'll review. A couple days later, they say, "Oh, it's just a mistake in the paperwork. You can either pay the full amount or we can take the garage off your lease." Oh, no. My contract clearly states the apartment and the garage is this price. Please correct your billing. I paid them the amount owed per the contract on the 1st. Now come the threats. Eviction, delinquent payment, going to affect credit, corporate lawyers. Luckily, I have prepaid legal services through my work. I call up the lawyer they refer me to and send off the contract. He calls me back the next day and says, "You're absolutely right, they don't have a leg to stand on here. Get their attorney to provide you in writing what they believe their legal basis is for demanding more than what's in the contract, and I'll take care of it." My favorite line in contracts like this is how they clearly state that it is the entirety of the agreement, so there's no chance of slipping in things on either side. The property manager calls me to come visit her in the office the same day and says she reviewed it with their attorney, and he believes they're in the right because of generally advertised pricing or some other nonsense. She also implied that the person who wrote the contract was in danger of losing their job because of the issue, as if she wasn't more liable for signing off on it. This is where I get to tell her I've also retained legal services and passed on what he said. The look on her face was priceless. She told me she would take it back to them. End of the story, I received a very terse note dropped on my doorstep a day later saying they've removed the extra charge from my account. I've been happily living in my new house for 4 years now, but that still gives me a warm glow when I remember it. Story 18. We were getting ready to move from the US Midwest to one of the US island territories back in 2000. We had 5 cell phones that I was going to have to cancel, and I was looking at some hefty cancellation fees. Then I remembered a clause, not in our contract, but that was printed on our bill a month or two earlier. Previously, they had not charged per minute rates for calls if they were automatically forwarded from the cell number to another number. I had mine set up to transfer to my landline. The notice had 2 important points. First, they would now charge for the duration of the call even if it was forwarded. Second, if I didn't agree to those terms, I could terminate the contract with no penalties. Remembering that I saw that saved me almost $1,000 in termination fees. I was prepared for a hassle when I contacted them, but the termination went smoothly. You're telling me you called a telecom service and they actually listened to what you had to say and canceled what you wanted them to? That's unbelievable. OP is some kind of wizard. I don't think I've ever once had a call with a telecom service that went the way I wanted it to. I bow down to you, sir. Or ma'am, it doesn't say. Anyway, that is all the stories we have for today. I would say there's takeaways for literally anyone listening, so you know what? An educational video. Gotta love it. For now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.